The first article that I wrote was fall of 1963, in which I had joined the staff, and was on the Negro in the Southern economy. And it took as something that's left over from Dr. King's speech that wasn't recognized as it should have been. It was very interesting. You know, the people waited all day to hear Dr. King at the March on Washington. And he knew it, and everybody knew it. And as he came up, people arose, and boom, boom, boom. And the day was made, and because it had been a great day, a great turnout, and now we were going to hear from the leader of our movement. And the first words out of his mouth is, why are we here? We're here because America has issued a bad check. It has come back to us marked insufficient funds. But we do not accept that there's no money in the Bank of Justice. You could have left right after that, because he came out in the first words were the economic situation. The Negro has been issued a bad check. And the government is saying it's marked insufficient funds. We don't accept that. The whole rest of his speech was premised on that. We've been issued a bad check. That's a form of insolvency. That's statement on the character of the country. The Negro has been issued a bad check. So I picked that up and did an article on the position of the black community in the Southern economy in 1963. That is, the fact of the kind of jobs we have, and whatever. And I said at the end that this is because I wanted to pay tribute to Dr. King's opening remarks. We've been issued a bad check. Now, that's a roguish claim. I mean, you know, like issuing bad checks is what rogues do. Issuing bad checks is there's no faith. You don't have no faith in that. That he could have gone on home after that. I mean, if all that had to do is register that. Why are we here? That's what he said. He said this is the reason we are here. In other words, the assumption that we would not have been necessary to be here. But America has issued us a bad check. And he didn't say that was an accident. He said, no, they've claimed there's no money in the Bank of Justice. He said, now, we know this is a bad check, but it's a lie. There ain't no money in the Bank of Justice. Oh, wait, what are we dealing with, a rogue? I mean, you know, it was a boom. So that's why my first article was, the first article I went on, did this study on the Negro in the Southern economy. And what it showed is that, among other things, that our overall income was 60% of the white income, not only in the South, but in the nation. That's what black income, and we are supposed to live off of that and do everything everybody else does, and then send our kids to college and buy clothes and food on 60% of the income of the average white family. What is the justification for that difference? How does the country different? You see, and then I said, well, I've written this article, and then I called attention to what Dr. King's opening remarks. But I venture to say you have not heard those opening remarks heard many times since that time. It's as if he never said it. They say, they diverted him to, and my little girl, well, he was saying that in all honesty. My little girl and my little boy, and I look forward to it. And, Clarence Jones says, tell him about your dream. So it comes out in the world as the dream speech. But he wasn't issuing no dream. You're not dreaming when you know that someone is giving you a bad check.
Well, let's talk about that a bit, because you mentioned that Dr. King was a Hegelian, which for people who don't know much about philosophy may not mean so much. But let's unpack that a bit. What do you mean by he was a Hegelian?
Well, he was a student of Hegel. His documentary, his thesis was on Hegel.
But what were the practical consequences?
He understood. He said truth is the relatedness of fact. That's one of the things he used to talk to our staff often about. That truth will set you free, because it's the relatedness. A fact alone is good to have, but unless you see that fact in relation to other facts, you never get to the truth. Truth to him was the Hegelian concept that truth is the relatedness of facts. So he would go around in the class, he would go around in the staff meeting on an issue that we were talking about and hear what people had to say, but when he came out of it, he had put them together because there was a relatedness. He said, the facts are good, but only when you understand the relatedness of facts.
Now, a lot of people, what was important to you, as you've told me, was that he had a critique of the economic system. That critique didn't often get out there. People didn't focus on that element of his message.
Yes.
Tell us because you talked to him about it, what did he think of the capitalist system?
I think the capitalist system, well, I speak from the vantage point of having a great-grandfather who was in slavery and escaped slavery to join the Union Army in Tennessee. I think the capitalist system is about capitalism and wealth. It is not about democracy. The capitalist system in the United States rested upon more than 100 years of slavery. We were not paid for our labor then and have not been paid since. That's the capitalist system. That's how it works. Robbery as an element is generally in that process. So the capitalist system is a reality, but it is not a reality that nurtures democracy. It's a reality that nurtures the growth of capitalism and the privatization of capitalism. We are facing an election this next year in which one family says they're going to put up $900 million to determine who's going to be president. That's capitalism. So, you know, that's an interesting question because at the end of World War II, a lot of people were looking for their independence, and they wanted, they wanted to be. The independence movement was on the move, and that independence had depended upon having some elements of something other than capitalism. They might have borrowed from the capitalist system certain things for small business and so forth, but the basic idea was that they reserved the right to adopt other forms of economic life because they were playing catch-up in the world and they had been denied their rights under the colonial system. The United States did not accept that. Those people called it, well, they called it the modern world, the world that would offer hope to people. The United States said, no, this is the age of American exceptionalism. The United States' position was that this is the American century, and that means that they were going to have hegemony over the decision-making process in the world with regard to whether people had a capitalist system as an economic system or some variety of socialism. So that has been a battleground for a number of years. And I think we are now witnessing some manifestations of it in a new way, you see.
Where did Dr. King fit in this debate?
Well, Dr. King was a Hegelian. And as a Hegelian, he understood the dialectic, as we said. He said in his Riverside Church speech, true compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It is necessary to recognize that a system that produces beggars needs restructuring. That's where he stood on capitalism. The system that produces the beggarhood that he's describing was the capitalist system. And he also said that the world expects of America a maturity we may not be able to achieve, because we have come up under a thesis, as you would say, or a set of assumptions that we have the right system. We just have to pump it up a little bit here and there. That there's nothing wrong with the system whatsoever. That's the basic assumption in the United States about capitalism. It just, it does not take into account that the purpose of capitalism is produce wealth. And the purpose of producing wealth is to keep it. And to keep it in the narrowest number of people as possible. Roosevelt said that the capitalists that opposed him, he welcomed their opposition. I mean, he said that publicly. He said, I welcome it. That's right. That's correct, because they are only thinking of one thing, and that's how much more wealth. When one family can talk about put up $800, $900 million to determine the outcome of an election, that tells you a lot about the workings of capitalism in America.
You once, you told me, I don't know if you overheard this conversation where Dr. King said this to you, but Dr. King explained that he could never be a communist because it's an atheistic, but he was working his way around Marxism in a way. Can you tell us, did he ever talk to you about, the role of faith in his understanding of economics, or?
No, I never had a conversation with him directly like that. But I think, well, in fact, I know that he was very realistic about change. And when we say realistic about it, he understood that Americans have a deep-seated history and devotion to capitalism. But he also said that the world expects of us a maturity we may not be able to achieve. And he was open to the fact that maybe capitalism in the United States would be our downfall, because we would never understand the humanity that was at stake in the world, that was trying to assert itself through the anti-colonial system and so forth. So when I say when I say he was a Hegelian, I was saying that he didn't believe in Marxism because Marxism was atheistic, but he believed in a society of economic justice, and he understood that capitalism was not that. I think I'm safe in saying that.